Welcome back, everybody. If you've been paying attention, the last few episodes we talked about the three-part concept album Slip, and that leads us to today. We're talking about how that Slip story put into context the whole story I've been trying to tell from within. This is Rob Moon. I have Joel from Dead Within Days with me, and you're watching The Verse. So in order to really tell you what I mean when I say that this Slip saga helped me contextualize this whole story I'm trying to tell from within, we have to refer to the 7 realities. That's what that poem that we put on the screen is talking about. By the way, if you're paying attention, that was in a previous episode. And that diagram that my friend Sean's son helped me make. So I kind of drew a mock version of that here. This refers to the 7 realities. The 7 realities, it's really a mathematical equation for which the dynamics between the characters and the stories told and how they all relate and interconnect. So we start with this big triangle. This big triangle is the ghost reality. That serves as the barrier between this living world and what comes before and what comes after. So the most human elements of the story and what we're going to be talking about today all happen within this triangle. And then these 2 little triangles here, each point on one of them will refer to one of the other 6 realities. So at the top of this left one, our first trinity, we have the sun and the moon. Within the story, the sun and the moon are 2 twin brothers that they're the main characters of the first leg of the story. Below them, we have the noon. We talked a lot about the hero's journey and how that really played into how I started to work that into the way I'm telling the story. My hero character, King Sheldon, he's the noon. The noon is there's like a duality to it. It's a concept I came up with myself, like referring to 12 o'clock noon that sits between the sun and the moon, the day and the night. On the other side here, we have the true reality and the dream reality and time. Time, we have interchangeable with memory. And the way that we remember things is never quite accurate. It's never exactly what happened. It lies somewhere between the truth of what happened and what you dream up in your own head. Now, I'm going to get a little bit into where I was when I started working on Slip. The Slip saga, the Slip concept, I started to write it at the end of 2018. I had just finished an album called Vehicles. That was my 6th project. And I already, in my mind, knew what I wanted to do. The next album that I wanted to write and start recording was a project called My Dreams Are Conspiracy Theories Volume 2. What you gotta understand about my process is, at the time, I would write the songs, I'd record them, I'd throw them up on Bandcamp, and I'd already be on to the next thing. And so I started working on these songs for My Dreams Volume 2, and I just realized they weren't what I wanted them to be. So I stopped and put them to the side. But I knew I didn't want to get rid of what I had recorded. I just knew that this wasn't what I wanted for that project. So I started to, as I told in the Slip Act 1 story, I just started to come up with this crazy story about vampires, about temptation. And as I went through the process of writing this and creating these songs, and still as I'm creating these songs, it started to give context to all the projects that I had done before. I've been working on this Ghost City Limits thing officially since 2016. I'd say really the idea was born as far back as 2011, 2012, like the idea to do something like this, the name was kicking around in my head. It was actually thrown in the hat for one of my previous bands that ended up being called as Levy's Break back in 2012. I want to take you back to the beginning and show how each of these albums connects. As I had these songs and I had these albums, there's tons of callbacks, there's tons of like connections between songs, but I didn't quite have an order to them. But doing this Slip project, everything really started to fall into place, which is why I call Slip really the halfway point. Things started to fall into place, and it made sense of what I had done before, and it made sense of where I'm going with it. The biggest constant in my life has been making music. So way back in 2016, I started to record my first, what would be the first Ghost City Limit album with my best friend, Sean Son. He had GarageBand on his iPhone 5 and a $40 iRig that we could plug the guitar into and record directly into an iPhone. And instead of a microphone, we used a headphone for me to sing into. But it's 4 songs. It has the song Tear Up My Lungs on it, which is now also a Stitched Up song. And this is the origin story of Ghost City Limits. That Heights and Rooftops story that start with my 7 characters. That's the first song. Those 7 realities that I was talking about earlier in the episode, the 7 characters that song that alludes to, those are, each one of those is a representative of our 7 realities. It's 7 kids who kind of escape from the shitty neighborhood they live in to be up on the rooftop and see the city from a higher perspective and get away from the drama down on the surface. At the end of the story, they break up and they go their separate ways, and that's really where the story begins. Before that EP, I released March of 2017, and immediately at the beginning of March, I was working on what would become the Sleepless Sessions Volume 1. I called it that album because during that time, I could not fucking sleep. Most of the stuff was recorded sometime between midnight and 7 in the morning. A really big point of context with this was, I mentioned before that I had a friend that took his own life in 2015, and I want to bring attention to the cover of the album. We're going to put it on our screen right now. This beautiful tree that I'm playing guitar under was on my college campus. That tree, that picture under the tree was taken in 2013, actually more than a year before I met this guy. And by the way, this is before we had even established the name Compost Universe, I believe. It was around the time that was starting to come together, and it was well before we had the image of Compost Universe itself being a tree. But this is really important towards the development of that. So after taking this picture of me playing under that tree, I would meet this guy Will, and he was another musician, another artist, and he just happened to love this particular tree. Now these trees, they would grow them on the campus only during the fall months. During the spring they'd be gone, they'd just be dead trees. This guy, he took his own life on April 27th of 2015. And May of that year, that tree, only that one, the one that he loved to look at, started growing again. And sometime after that, I found that picture of me playing under it. That's why I used the picture of the album cover. There is a song on the project that's dedicated to him. And when that happened, the night before that incident happened, I was with him until like the early hours of the morning. And I think that happening in my life at the time just really made it difficult for me to sleep at night. I was haunted by just a lot of guilt, a lot of regret, a lot of unanswered questions about why something like that would happen. This is what we call the story of the moon. This character who I wasn't quite sure exactly who he was at the time. When we get to Slip, we're gonna see, oh, this is the same guy. He's living in kind of a nightmare. He experiences a loss of love. He goes through a breakup. He's throughout the songs on the album, you can't tell whether he's asleep or dreaming by design. He's floating between the world of the day and the world of the night. You can't tell whether he's asleep or awake, and that's really how the album structures. It's very dark, it's very rough and raw, and that's really what the albums deal with. It's the things that keep you up at night. It's the things that visit you in your sleep. It's the things that look different in the dark than in the day, that make you think like, what the fuck is that? Like, why is that so creepy now? The shadows that exist beyond the periphery of what you see during the day. And notably in the last song, it's called Alarm Clock Hanging from the Ceiling Fan, there's a very poignant line in the song, I can't see my own reflection. We're gonna leave that one there. So the character that the Sleepless Sessions describe, his name is Richard Gallion, and his story was inspired by the grief I was dealing with and the loss I was dealing with. He's really a self-insert for me. He loses a very close friend that is kind of like, he feels like is trying to reach him in his dreams. He loses a lover, which was also loosely true for me at the time. And then going forward, we're going to talk about his counterpart, the son, Donald Gallion. Donald Gallion is the main character of the album Underpass. Underpass was inspired because of the album covers me standing under the underpass at Sweet Hollow Road, Long Island, just under the Northern State Parkway. To those who don't live in Suffolk County, many people think this underpass is haunted. Many weird stories of if you stop your car, someone jumps up out at you, some weird shit happens there at night. It's a pitch black road, and people like to drive through with no headlights on, and it's considered one of the 10 most haunted places on Long Island. So perfect place for an album cover. Underpass. It starts with the song Crossing Over, where Donald Gallion walks towards the underpass, and a ghost sits at the ledge of it and looks at him and says, I'm going to watch you and decide whether or not life is worth preserving or whether we're all just doomed and screwed. And each song is a kind of a trial that he's going through, and at the end it's decided yeah, we really are just doomed. Notably, that last song on the album is called Tear Up My Lungs Part 2. It is another metaphor for drowning, another metaphor for being lost at sea, which I, for some reason, tend to do a lot with these songs. Now, the cool thing about those two albums, the Sleepless Sessions and the Underpass, is both brothers are suffering from a loss that really inspires the trial that they go through. The person that they lost is each other. The two brothers, the sun and the moon, are separate. They can never come together because they're not in the sky at the same time. So they're like the friend that they lost that they're longing for is their twin brother, each other, but they haven't yet figured that out. And I hadn't yet figured that out. Again, we're moving ever closer to Slip, where that all starts to really make sense. Before I continue, what I have to say is, when these characters I have that represent these different realities within the world, the if one dies, that doesn't mean that reality ends. This thing continues through other characters. Like the the legacy will always be passed on to somebody else. So the characters that represent the realities have multiple names. They live multiple lifetimes. I kind of started to touch on that during Slip. We get to My Dreams Are Conspiracy Theories Volume 1. When I started Ghost City Limits, this is the project that I had in mind. It was 9 songs I had written that I just desperately wanted to get recorded. And I just had no way to do it at the time. So my good friend Mike Marziano from Soul Searcher had me come over and record the drums for these 9 songs. At the time, I had no idea what a click track was, or really any of that. I kind of just recorded from memory. He was asking me like, "Oh, what tempo are these songs?" I was like, "How the fuck am I supposed to know that?" I just kind of play the fast double bass and the blast beats, and then I slow down for the slow parts, right? And it's an absolute mess. So that was way back in 2015. Remember I said I started to record one project and said, wait, I'm not really ready for this one, and that led me to doing Slip. That's kind of been my MO. But I never stopped making the music. I've just kind of jumped around a lot, and I've learned that chaos has become controlled chaos thanks to the Slip project. So one of the reasons that I called the first album Before, not only is it before the rest of the story, it's the beginning. 2 of the songs on the acoustic album, Postmortem Romance and Tear Up My Lungs, are on this album. Now, I went and recorded it myself. I, once again, was screaming into an iPhone, and I had a guitar barely plugged into it. So I made a mess of an album, and the good news is, starting about 2 years ago, I started finally giving this album a proper recording, again with Mike. We did all the drums, to a click this time, all natural drums, recorded the guitars and stuff with Mike. We're in the process of working with the vocals. So the true version of this album, probably sometime end of this year, beginning of next, will finally come out. The story of it is, it dives deeper into the arc of Donald Gallion during Underpass. He's lost a very dear friend. Somebody killed him. He's looking for the cause of what killed his friend. He realizes it's not just a single isolated incident. It's wrapped up in a greater global government conspiracy type thing. The problem is he can't tell what's true and what he's dreaming. He's losing track of exactly what's real and what he's looking forward to, and starts to lose his reality over time. There's a sequel to that album that's gonna really uncover what that really means and why that's happening, but we're not gonna get to that today because I haven't recorded any of it yet, except for some demos that we put to the side. But I'll hint that it has something to do with an MK Ultra type vibe. That thoughts are being put in his head, not from him. So we move on. Album number 5 is called Signs of a Civilization Collapsing. That title actually comes from the song Sleepless off way back in the Sleepless sessions. That's the first line in the first verse of that song, which I do consider the most prominent song on the album. It's I see the signs of a civilization collapsing. And that, kind of just evokes a lot of feelings of the stability we have is not forever. Things are going in a more chaotic direction. But this album it's not a concept album like the ones before it, where there's each song would be a chapter in a book. It's more like a bunch of small ideas that later on become pages of lore. The song The Hollow Place, it's a cool little acoustic song I made. It's it's a song about not wanting to be in a place that's hollow, wanting to find meaning in the things that you do and the life that you lead. But I later on wrote a book based on that song, a short story based on that song called The Hollow Place, and it's actually Sheldon's origin story. So this is the first point where King Sheldon appears independently in the book. A bunch of the songs on it are like acoustic versions of songs that I'm going to record with drums and everything for later albums, like In Too Deep, which is going to be for Sheldon's album, or the song Growing Wings, which is going to be for the sequel to My Dreams Are Conspiracy Theories. Another one is the song Stimulants, which for the same album, that one features Mike Marzliano on some guitar and vocals with me. And yeah, it's really like a culmination of a bunch of these ideas that it's really an entry point for a bunch of concepts that later get evoked into the story. I performed the closing track at Moon Groove Records Fest for anyone who was there. It's called Lying Through My Teeth. And we move on to chapter 6. So number 6 is Vehicles, and it has a little bit more, it's like Signs of a Civilization, where it's not a one arc, but there is more of a link between song to song. I always wanted to make a project called Vehicles from when I got hit by a car when I was 15. And then when I was 21, I totaled my first car. And I have this picture of my car all smashed up, and I just kind of wrote Vehicles on it with like edit paint on the computer. And that's where the, it's just my little Toyota Camry all smashed up. And it's another one that like, it has a very loose arc. Like each song is linked to the next song, but it's not a book. It's like another one that are, like a bunch of them are gonna be stories. They're more, the songs are more linked together than Signs, but it's not quite one arc. It's more like another collection of ideas that leads into what I would do next. I had some of my old friends feature two of the members of my old band is Levy's Break. Shout out to Dylan Ashley. I had my friend Ben from They Found Glory feature on a song. By the way, he's actually been on a song on every project since the Sleepless Sessions. Shout out to Ben. There's a link between just, it's really just more the subject matter is linked, and this is another one that some of these songs will be birthed into greater stories, like Phantom Pain. The closing track is actually part 3 to Tear Up My Lungs. That one's called Washing Ashore. I recorded it soaked in reverb, so it sounds like you're underwater. It's pretty hard to listen to, but that's what it's supposed to sound like. And so here we are where I was at the end of 2018, putting Vehicles out. I also want to mention that around that same time, Ben and I had just finished writing our third book for the third part of our great concept album series. This book was called Ponce de Leon and the Adventure in the New World, also the album. The reason I bring that up is because They Found Glory is a project that the major albums we've made each deal with a different figure in history, and they're all connected by one character who's immortal and lives to see it all. That's really important because it's going to bring us back to the concept of time, but I'll get back to that later. But the reason I brought up Ponce de Leon now is because that album is the first time we introduce a vampire into the story. It was the end of 2018, and I began working on what I thought was going to be my next project. And like I said, the stuff just wasn't up to snuff, right? So I was listening to my old album, Sleepless Sessions, and I was like, I wish I could make stuff that sounded like this again. And I was like, fuck, why don't I? So I started working on some songs in that vein, and around the same time, I wrote The Count and a few other of the bluesy songs that would end up being on Slip. I was kind of working on these two projects in tandem, and I decided that the demos that I record were going to be saved for a little compilation called Precursor that I would get to later. So we get into the Sleepless Sessions Volume 2. We continue where Richard Gallion left off. He's still stuck within a dream world, but he's gotten more of a handle on how to operate within this world. He's learning what the things he's being told in his dreams mean. He's learning that he's been looking for his brother the whole time. And this is told over the course of songs like The Corner, The Reawakening, which is another one featuring my good friend Ben. We do a reprise of one of the songs from the Sleepless Sessions. We have a song called Sleepless Coda, which is where he learns the truth, that he's a vampire. He realizes why he's haunted by these horrible dreams, that why he looks in the mirror and doesn't see anything, because he's a vampire. He has been the whole time. That's where it gets revealed. That's where we really dive into that concept. I put that song at the very end of the album. It's the second to last one, because I already knew that the next thing was we're going to tell the story of how this man became a vampire and what that means for who he is and his arc. And that's what brings us to Slip. Because of telling this whole story of Slip and this duality between humans and vampires, between the temptation, between the light and the dark, the good and the evil, I was able to, I've been talking about these things before. Why did I say I can't see my own reflection? Then later on, we start introducing vampires into these stories that come and just fuck up what you have going on. It's because I've been moving towards this. And this order that I speak of these projects with now, it wasn't really there. I didn't quite know what fit where. I just knew that there were these interlocking features of them. I talked about the Precursor album because I have songs that I'm gonna like revisit later on them, and I just released them as they are now, plus a few just cool things I had laying around, plus some acoustic recordings of songs from my old bands from high school and college. I called it Precursor because it's the precursor of something to come next. Just like with my album before, I wanted to be working on that My Dreams Are Conspiracy Theories Volume 1, but I wasn't quite ready to do it, so I made the album before. That's where the name came from. Precursor is really a precursor to the sequel to that album. And I started to see visually like a circle of where these all fall. There's parallels between both sides of the circle. Before clearly parallels Precursor. Sleepless 1 clearly parallels Sleepless 2. And I'm going to put a visual up on the screen so you could see it. This is a clock. All of these albums functions as hours on a 12-hour clock. So if you've been counting, we're up to 8 o'clock. Slip is 8 o'clock. Now, you would think that 6 would be the halfway point. However, these first 7 hours refer to one album. Ever since Slip is 3 acts, each with an album attached to it. Slip is attached to Precursor. There's another project I'm working on called The Unstable Project, which is attached to Slip Act 2. Fun fact, Underpass, Unstable, there's my weird little parallel there. The 9 o'clock is going to be that sequel to the My Dreams Are Conspiracy Theories Volume 1, Volume 2. There's your parallel there. The 11th hour is going to be Sheldon's story, and then we're going to move to Sheldon's real hour, where the ultimate sacrifice is made and the end of the world, the end of this world comes, and the beginning of a new world comes, where the 7 realities finally once again come together. That'd be 12 o'clock noon. And that visual all came from like where I was when I realized, okay, I'm not ready to do this, so I'm going to do this. This giant world of Slit that ties back to everything I've done before helped me put it all into context. And that's what all this rambling today was trying to say. So I hope that you're staying tuned for the things I'm going to do next, put out, and we keep moving as time keeps moving. I mentioned the They Found Glory projects that each bring us to a different figure and time period in history, while Ghost City Limits is being told on the visual of a clock. This is a story all about time. Listen to what we said at the beginning. Sun follows moon, moon follows sun, noon lies somewhere in between. Time lies somewhere between dream and truth. All of this is related to time. It's all about the things changing as time goes on. So those two projects and all the other things I'm involved in that I didn't even really touch on today are all about the effects of time on our nature and what it changes about us. They exist on as houses on the same street, or as we've said before, as books in a library, as branches on a tree. That's why I came up with these visuals to show the dynamics between these stories, because I think that's really what I'm trying to say. Everything affects everything. So this moment here, I'm calling the end of season 1 of The Verse. This is our season finale. 14 episodes. I want to thank everyone who's tuned in, everyone who's commented, shared it, liked it, and to everyone who's been on. And it's been a fun ride. I needed a little reset to really figure out what I wanted to say with this podcast. So I took a step back and decided to talk about some of my own lore to really get it out there, what it is we're trying to do here. You know, I hope that some of you watch this and hear things in that the Slip episodes and this one that you relate to, or some of the ones with our guests that you relate to. I hope that if you have something you want to say, you want to be on it, message me, Compost Universe on Instagram. Follow me there and message me. Comment on the YouTube. You know, we want to get more artists on. We have plans to bring back some of our previous guests. We want to get new people on, and we want to keep adding branches to this tree. I once again can't thank you enough for listening to me ramble about my music that 7 people have listened to. But it's been awesome. Thank you again to Joel for working on this with me, for helping me organize my thoughts. And thank you to Moon Groove Records, you know, for hosting this on their channel. Thank you to Tom. So remember to keep tuning into The Verse, comment your thoughts, hit us up to collaborate, follow Compost Universe on Instagram, subscribe to Moon Groove Records. We'll see you next time on The Verse.